Hello guys, chapter 16, it's about endocrine system, the glands of your body and also the hormones. So the glands secretes the hormones and that's what this chapter is about. A quick introduction to this chapter that the endocrine system and your nervous system pretty much controls your entire body, your actions, reactions, your digestions, and so on and so forth. That's pretty much these two systems. They do control us. Here they are the main glands of the body are listed here. The pituitary gland, which is made up of the posterior pituitary and anterior pituitary gland. And then you have, hypothalamus is pretty much control the pituitary gland, and it's listed there. And then you have thyroid gland right in the neck region, and in the back of it, there are 4 parathyroid gland. And then you have thymus gland right here on your body, which is nowadays it is important because of COVID-19. It secretes a lot of T cells, thymus T cells. So T for thymus. And then it is important for your immunity. I was watching a video on YouTube. There's a lot of things out there. It said you should hit your thymus gland. As you age, something about thymus gland. As you age, your thymus gland becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. Okay. Then after thymus gland, there are 2 adrenal glands on top of your kidney. That's what they call them, adrenal gland. And then you have the pancreas, and then you have the testes and ovaries. So some of these glands are part of, like pancreas is part of the digestive system also. We talked about it in digestive system. And the testes and ovaries, I haven't talked about the reproductive system. Sometimes, well, not sometimes. So if there is a multiple choice question, it can be these testes and ovaries, they can be part of the reproductive system as well. Okay, then we have two types of glands in our body. One of them is called exocrine gland, and the other one is called endocrine gland. Exocrine gland secretes the products, the hormones, whatever it is, they're secreting into a duct, into a tube. Okay. The endocrine gland, which most of our glands in our body are endocrine glands, they secrete their products, the hormones, into bloodstream. Okay, so that's a big difference between endocrine and exocrine gland. And then, of course, they have the the products goes, the hormones goes into the target cells. That's what the other was saying. The nervous system and endocrine system both use chemical signals, yes. The nervous system uses the neurotransmitters. We talked about that, acetylcholine, GABA. Some neurotransmitters like norepinephrine and epinephrine are also hormones. Okay, so some, not a lot. And then the endocrine, the nervous system, you can see the results faster. Endocrine system, you see the results a little bit slower, and it gets there at a slower time. And that's another difference between endocrine system and nervous system. Here they are, they're showing you that, for example, pancreas secretes its secretions, its hormones, and by blood, it goes into the blood vessel and goes to the liver, and the effects are seen a few hours, a few minutes, depends what you're talking about. In this case, he's talking about insulin later. However, if the neurotransmitters on the bottom of the diagram, they're showing it to you, they release their neurotransmitters, and you see the effects immediately on the cells. Okay, between the hormones are means of communication between cells, between body parts, and even between individuals. Okay, like pheromone. He's talking about pheromone, which is the, it could be the effects between individuals. Okay, here is the target cells and non-target cells and the receptors on them. I'm not gonna go over it, so you can study it on your own. Local hormones, they affect the neighboring cells. And here we go, pheromones influences the behavior of other individuals, and so on and so forth. So read these things on your own. They're not that, they're important. I'm not saying they're not important, but just, you know, that the actions of hormones, peptides, proteins, glycoproteins, and modified amino acids. The hormones are broken down to two groups. The peptides, and some of them are, when I say peptide hormones, some of them are proteins, like growth hormone is a protein. Insulin, it's a protein. It's a, you know, almost polypeptide protein. And steroid hormones, they are made from cholesterol. And example of steroid hormone would be, for example, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone. They're all examples of steroid hormones. Most hormones are peptide. Oops, I'm sorry. Most hormones are peptides, and then they can, that is when epinephrine binds to receptors on muscle cells, break down glycogen, and so on and so forth, cyclic AMP. I will not ask anything about that one because that's for biology one, but anyhow, sometimes they act as a second messenger. So a hormone will release and goes to a gland, and a gland, you know, starts making cyclic AMP again as a second messenger. So here they are, the effect of cyclic AMP and breakdown of glycogen, and breakdown of glycogen. You know, that would be a nice diagram. Please read it on your own. If you have any question, please let me know. So other adrenal glands and ovaries and testes, the action of steroid hormones. So what happens with steroid hormones? They pass through the cell membrane easily because they are lipids, and they are hydrophilic. So they pass through, and they go to the cell, they go to the nucleus, and then what happens in the nucleus, they go ahead and they unbound the DNA, and DNA opens up, and mRNA synthesized, and mRNA comes out of the nucleus and synthesizes protein, which goes through the ribosomes and so on and so forth. So that's what pretty much most of the steroid hormones do. They're involved in protein synthesis. Okay, so these are learning outcomes. Hypothalamus, link between the nervous and endocrine system. It regulates the internal environment via the autonomic nervous system, and helps control body temperature and so on and so forth. Hypothalamus, it controls the pituitary gland, and I'm going to get into pituitary gland next, which is the posterior and anterior pituitary glands. There are neurosecretory cells in the hypothalamus, which they produce hormones of antidiuretic hormone, ADH, and oxytocin. So we are getting to posterior pituitary glands. The posterior pituitary gland does not secrete any hormone on its own. Okay, the hormones are made. These two hormones, ADH and oxytocin, are made in hypothalamus, but they are being stored in posterior pituitary gland, and as needed, they are secreted. Okay, so posterior pituitary gland do not make these hormones. So here they are. They're showing you that these neurosecretory cells, they make ADH and oxytocin, and they go to posterior pituitary gland, and this neck, there is a passageway, is called infundibulum. I don't think it's, okay, it's called infundibulum, and then that's a passageway for these hormones, and they're going to be stored in posterior pituitary gland. And of course, as you know, ADH has an effect on kidney. I might not refer to these later on, so quickly I'll go over them now, so later on I will not talk about them. And what happens with kidney if there's a high amount of ADH, it stores water for you. If you're stranded in the desert, so it stores the water. If you're running an event, you're being active, it stores the water. And then the other hormone, oxytocin, during labor, it has a positive feedback and is secreted more and more and more and more. So the baby is born during labor. You see a surge of oxytocin. And also oxytocin is involved in mammary glands after birth, so it keeps the secretion of the milk. Prolactin is the initiate milk letdown, but oxytocin keep it going. So certain neurons and hypothalamus, so anyhow, there is negative feedback. I guess I will talk about that. ADH is involved with diabetes insipidus, and oxytocin, everything that I talked about it, oxytocin positive feedback, but most other hormones that I will talk about, they are negative feedback. I don't think I will talk about anything else that is positive feedback. Yeah. Okay, then anterior pituitary gland, we are moving to anterior pituitary glands. Anterior pituitary glands, thyroid releasing hormone, they come from hypothalamus, thyroid releasing hormone and thyroid inhibiting hormones. They come from hypothalamus, but pituitary itself releases TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. And thyroid stimulating hormone goes to the thyroid gland and causes to release the thyroxine. They have the same ending, that's why I got mixed up. Thyroxine, and that's what the TSH, when you go to the doctor to check your thyroid gland, they do also check your TSH, see if it is everything is okay or not. Adrenocorticotropic hormone is another hormone that has effect on adrenal glands on top of kidney. It's a pyramid shape. This is, for example, kidney, and how can I draw a pyramid? It's a pyramid shape on top of the kidney, and then stimulates adrenal cortex to produce cortisol, which I will talk about it a little bit later on. Gonadotropic hormones, these are the hormones like FSH and LH that they are secreted again from your pituitary gland, and they have effect on ovaries and testes. Okay, here they are. They're talking about these things, the thyroid gland, thyroid stimulating hormone, adrenal cortex, and prolactin. It is involved in milk letdown. And then that's all we are focusing on now. If you open up a endocrinology textbook, they might list other functions of prolactin, which again, I will not talk about. Growth hormone, our growth hormone has an effect on all over our body. It has an effect on all over our body. And then of course, the gonadotropic hormone, I talked about it, has an effect on testes and ovaries. Here he's talking about the negative feedback. There is too much of a certain hormone, it goes back to that gland and says, okay, stop releasing that hormone anymore, okay, for now. And then when the levels of the hormone comes down, then they're secreted, just like TRH is secreted. It tells the pituitary gland, anterior pituitary gland to secrete TSH. And then when you have a lot of thyroxine in the body, what happens, the thyroxine goes back to hypothalamus and tells hypothalamus to stop. Okay, I hope I'm making some sense. And that is called negative feedback or feedback inhibition. Anyhow. So prolactin produces only after milk, only after childbirth, causes mammary glands to produce. Okay, melanocyte stimulating hormone, when I took endocrinology back in my days, they said come from the intermediate lobe of pituitary gland. But nowadays the textbooks do not mention it anymore. That is fine. So it is, they're saying it comes from anterior pituitary gland, and then it causes your skin coloration, you're in the sun. So melanin is secreted. And then growth hormone, we talked about this, and insulin, like growth factors and so on and so forth. These are the effects of growth hormone. It can cause dwarfism, if there is not enough of it. And then, of course, giantism is called, in the children, there's too much of growth hormone, and in adult, acromegaly, if there is too much of that hormone, that's acromegaly, and that is acromegaly again. Anyhow. So let's go to thyroid gland, regulates metabolic rate. Yes, BMR. So be familiar with that term. Your textbook did not give it to you. It's called basal metabolic rate. That's what thyroid glands, that thyroxine is responsible for. Again, when I was a student, they said, okay, T3 is the thyroxine and T4 is this and that. It switches back and forth several times. So there's a molecule, there's a protein molecule here. There are 3 iodine. The abbreviation for iodine is I. There are 3 iodine attached to it. Then it's called triiodothyronine. If there are 4 iodine attached to it, it's called thyroxine. If there is a 4th one attached to it, it's called thyroxine. And that is responsible for your basal minimum of your metabolism. For example, the best analogy I have for this, if you are sitting inside of your car, not electric car, or I'm not talking about the hybrid cars, maybe the normal cars, not normal, the car that are on gasoline. The car is using gasoline, but it's not moving. That is called, in our body, that is called BMR. At night when we're sleeping, we are not doing much activity, but still our metabolism needs to keep going. We are watching TV, our metabolism still needs to keep going. And that is called basal metabolic rate. When you're studying, of course, your metabolism goes up. When you're exercising, your metabolism goes up. That's not BMR. So thyroxine is responsible for BMR, your basal metabolic rate. So anyhow, and then if there is not, your thyroid gland is not secreting enough thyroxine, there is not enough iodine in your diet, what happens to thyroid gland is enlarged, and it's called goiter. What happens, and this is a case of hypothyroidism, hyperthyroidism, by looking at the eyeballs, you can tell the person is hyperthyroidism. In case of goiter, the hypothyroidism, the goiter, the thyroid glands becomes enlarged. Back in 1930s, U.S. Government passed a law that you need to add iodine to bread and salt, because those are the 2 things that every ethnicity, everybody uses it. So the level of the goiter in the United States went down in the 1940s. Congenital hypothyroidism, mixed edema, hypothyroidism in adults. So anyhow, I'm not gonna, please read it on your own. There are different types of diseases that happens with goiter. The other hormone that comes from your thyroid gland, 2 hormones come from your thyroid gland that your textbook mentioned. So we'll go by that, there is more, but there are 2 that your textbook mentioned, is calcitonin. Calcitonin is responsible for regulating the calcium level in your blood. It lowers the calcium level in your blood. What happens with calcitonin? It picks up the calcium from your blood and takes it to your bone. And in the bone, there are cells that's called osteoblast, which makes up bone. And that's with the help of calcitonin, those cells go into bone. Those calciums that they picked up from blood, it goes to the bone, and osteoblast is being made. Right here, they're talking about it. So calcitonin, and there is another hormone which is responsible to break down bone. It's called bone remodeling. And that comes up, bone remodeling. Okay, so there is another hormone, parathyroid hormone, right here. As I said, they are in the back of thyroid gland. Thyroid gland is like this, and parathyroid are in the back, okay, 4 of them. So the function of parathyroid hormone is to release calcium from bone, okay? And also kidney reabsorbs calcium from kidney And then intestine absorbs calcium from digestive tract, from the food that you eat. So that's a cycle goes on between kidney and intestine right here. And then of course, parathyroid hormone, it goes to the bone, and with help of osteoclast, it breaks down bone. And so the level of calcium in your blood gotta go up, okay? And calcitonin has the opposite effect, okay? It reduces the calcium level in your blood. Oh, okay, so here we go, talks about a lot of stuff, hypoparathyroidism, and it causes increased nerve signals. We talked about it, calcium is needed for neurotransmitters to be released. If there's too much calcium, then that can cause muscle tetany. Okay, hyperparathyroidism. Okay, let's move on. Adrenal glands, they're on top of your kidney. There are 3 layers in here. So there's adrenal cortex and adrenal medulla. This is adrenal medulla, adrenal cortex. So let's go ahead, and adrenal medulla really releases the hormone epinephrine, norepinephrine. In case of fight or flight, either you stay and fight, or you better run, flight. That's what they call it, flight. And that's what adrenaline does for you. Adrenaline will increase your heartbeat, increase breakdown of sugar molecule in your body, so you have energy to run or stand and fight. And these 2 actions cannot go on for a long time. If it does, then the body shut down, the person will die. What will happen, there's another hormone called norepinephrine or noradrenaline is secreted and counteract the effect of adrenaline. Okay, I hope I'm making some sense. And that comes from, these 2 hormones come from the middle layer, those pyramid shape, the middle layer, adrenal medulla, comes from adrenal medulla. Those 2 hormones comes from adrenal medulla. Okay, so the hormone, we talked about it, hypothalamus, there is a stress, and then what happens, it releases the hormones that goes to anterior pituitary gland releases ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone, and then they come to epinephrine, norepinephrine, releases those 2 hormones. Okay, adrenal cortex, on the other hand, has 3 zones: zona glomerulosa, zona fasciculata, and zona reticularis. Unfortunately for your labs, you do not have that slide, but I might put it in the future semester. I might put that slide in there so you guys can take a look at it and enjoy it. And you can tell them apart very easy. Major hormones that are produced by adrenal cortex are glucocorticoids and mineralocorticoids. Also secretes a small amount of male and female sex hormones, which I will talk about it later. So connective tissue on top of adrenal cortex, they just took a chunk of a little bit of adrenal gland, your adrenal gland, and they are showing it here. So there is nothing up here, just connective tissue. And then underneath, they call it zona glomerulosa. Just like your kidney, they are like a glomerulus shape. Okay, that's what they call it, zona glomerulosa. Glomerulosa, it means fist. That's what they look like on the microscope. And you will see it here in a minute. And then zona fasciculata, the cells run like a column. Look at them, they are like a column. The cells are like a column. And then zona reticularis, the cells run this way, okay, perpendicular to zona fasciculata. And underneath of zona reticularis is your adrenal medulla. So here talking about ACTH that is secreted, and it has effect on the cortex layer, and glucocorticoid, it is responsible for metabolism of carbohydrates, proteins, and fat, but it pretty much makes up glucose molecules, and that's what glucocorticoid is responsible. Glucocorticoids raise the blood glucose in the body, as I said, and breakdown of amino acids and other effects it has. Mineralocorticoid, on the other hand, it is responsible for your sodium, potassium concentration level. Okay, so it goes to the kidney and it promotes absorption and excretion of these two ions. Mineralocorticoids also, it is responsible for secretion of renin, sodium level, and blood pressures. So angiotensinogen and angiotensin 1 and 2. You guys read on your own, and if you have any questions, we can talk about it a little bit more. Okay, arterial natriuretic hormone ANH, which comes from heart. I don't know why. Okay, and of course it's related to the kidney. Here we go, and they are both of them are they balance heart and kidney. Are responsible for balancing of the sodium level, which we talked about. It's very important, balance of sodium in your blood. Okay, sex steroids, I talked about it. Estrogen, gonadocorticoids, they go to the, includes the male sex hormones, androgens, and female sex hormone, estrogens, and primary androgen is involved in DHEA, which is a precursor to testosterone, and then estradiol and estrogen. Also, they have precursors, which your textbook did not talk about them. Addison disease is hyposecretion of glucocorticoids, and here they are. Cushing disease is oversecretion of glucocorticoids. Again, these are the signs and symptoms. And pancreas, let's talk about pancreas. Your textbook mentioned 3 of them. There are about, as far as I know, there are 5 of them, but 5 hormones can come from pancreas, but there are 3 of them. 2 of them very important, glucagon and insulin. They work opposite of each other, just like calcitonin and parathyroid hormone. They work opposite of each other. Insulin, it takes the glucose from your blood and put them in the tissues of your body, especially liver and muscle. Glucagon, it goes and breaks down those glucose molecules from a molecule that is formed called glycogen. Okay, so that is the effect of insulin and glucagon. I'm not too worried about the D cells. Do not worry about it. So here they are. He's talking about insulin and probably diabetes. These are islets of Langerhans. Islets of Langerhans, they are endocrine. And then outside of it is exocrine, exocrine assadi, which you do have microscopic slide of these. These are exocrine, okay, glands. And here they are telling you what happens with the effect of insulin and so on and so forth. Glucagon, opposite of insulin, it works, and right here, comes from the islets of Langerhans. This is islets of Langerhans. This thing up nicely for you guys. The slides we have in the lab, it's not as good as that one. Diabetes mellitus, there are 2 types of diabetes, type 1 and type 2. Again, it's just because well, type 1, let's talk about it. It's a juvenile diabetes and insulin-dependent diabetes, diabetes mellitus. And what happens, these are usually happening in younger people. They make enough insulin, but the cells of the body are not receptor to these insulin. Okay, so that's called juvenile type. The second type is called the adult type, or does he have another insulin-dependent diabetes, type 2? It's like an older age. When people get older a little bit and the body does not secrete enough insulin, that is easier to handle, right? Insulin shots and things will work out fine. Although the causes of the forms of diabetes are different, they can occur in children and adults as well too. Yes, that's true. Diabetes 1, it can cause ketoacidosis because the body starts breaking down the fat molecules for source of energy. And what happens when there is a byproduct, those fat molecules called ketone bodies, too much of that, it can cause acidic environment in the body, and that is dangerous. The person can end up in coma. Okay, hypoglycemic, it means low level of, you all know what is hypo means, low levels of sugar in the body, hyperglycemic, high levels of in the body. And then please read the rest of diabetes. It is good information that you should know. The next one are the gonads, and he's mixing up the gonads and thymus and pineal gland. So let's go with testes and ovaries. Of course, I talked about them. One thing that I should say about this chapter, very, very important. Every hormone that female secretes, male secreted too. Every hormone that male secretes, female secreted too. For example, female secretes testosterone, but the level of it is low. We male secrete estrogen and progesterone, but the level of it is low. We release oxytocin, but in male, what is the purpose of oxytocin? We never give birth. All I wanted to say, the levels of hormones is different between male and female. Female have more estrogen and progesterone, less testosterone. On the other hand, male have less estrogen, progesterone. So every hormone that is in male, it is in female too. These diagrams, they're showing you the effects of FSH and LH. Estrogen, they cause a release of testosterone in male, and the FSH and LH in female, estrogen and progesterone. And of course, male secretes FSH too. We don't have the follicles in our ovaries, but we do release FSH. We do have FSH in our body. Anabolic steroids, they are steroids molecules that they can increase the anabolism of the body. And anabolism, as we talked about it previously, means building up. The other one your textbook is getting to is beneath sternum right here. It's thymus gland. Reaches the largest size in the active during childhood, and thymosis, it causes the lymphocytes to mature, and so on. A pineal gland is in the brain. It releases melatonin, which nowadays they are talking about. It's for sleep at night. If I cannot sleep, I do not recommend it, but circadian rhythm, it keeps the circadian rhythm to take melatonin. Anyhow, another hormone, erythropoietin, I talked about it when we talked about kidney. Leptin, I didn't talk about it in digestive system. That hormone, it gives you a feel of satisfaction, okay? So that's what leptin hormone, yes, it gives you. Prostaglandin, in the last chapter, I talked about it. It is made from arachidonic acids. And the function of it, I like to go over them because I talked about it in last chapter, and I said, okay, I will talk about it. It can be secreted from all over your body, but not distributed in the blood. They act locally. So, okay, I think I talked about that. Are produced and damaged tissues, last chapter, that it causes pain. Plus these, it in the uterus causes muscles to contract and cramps during period, during the PMS. Helps cause fevers, okay, it increases fever. Fever is not bad for the body. Fever is good, but if it gets too high, then it can cause some problems. But when you're keeping it low between 30 Celsius, 38, 39 Celsius, it's getting rid of the microorganisms or pathogens which are inside of your body. When it gets to 40, 41, then definitely you gotta treat it. So reduce gastric secretions. So treat gastric refluxes, lower blood pressure. So treat hypertension, and inhibit platelets aggregation. So prevent thrombosis. Okay, so the nervous system, external, provide with CNS, endocrine system, and nervous system, they work together. Here is pretty much is talking about endocrine system is controlling reproductive system. We will talk about some of this in the reproductive system, but let's talk about it here now. It's finished. Okay, great. There's not neuroendocrine combination of two systems, hypothalamus, bridges the regulatory activities of the nervous system and endocrine system. Very good. He said it, then hypothalamus is very, very important in our body. Okay, so I should stop recording.